There's a mistake Australian retirees keep making when they downsize. It costs around $40,000, and most don't even see it coming until the money's already gone. For a couple selling the family home in their late 60s, that mistake is the difference between the comfortable nest egg they pictured and a windfall that quietly shrinks to a fraction of what they expected. Today, you're going to see exactly where that $40,000 disappears to, and why, for some retirees, the real cost runs much deeper than 40 grand. I spent weeks going through the stamp duty tables of every state, the real transaction costs, and the pension rules, to show you the whole bill, not the brochure version. Because downsizing is the single biggest money move most retirees make. Get it right, and it funds your retirement. Get it wrong, and it eats it. Everyone tells you the same thing. Sell the big house, buy something smaller, free up your equity. It's the smart, obvious move. And in the right circumstances, it can be. But the move itself, the simple act of selling one home and buying another, can quietly cost you $40,000. And the windfall you've been picturing? It's almost never the number you think it is. Before we go on, the honest heads up. This is market analysis, not legal or financial advice. Before you make a move this big, speak to an independent professional. So let's start with what downsizing actually promises, because the dream is genuinely appealing. You sell the family home too big now, too much to clean, too much garden, too far from the grandkids. You buy something smaller and easier. You pocket the difference, top up your super, and breathe a little easier in retirement. That's the pitch. And it's why just downsize has become the standard advice handed to every Australian over 60. But here's the first quiet truth. Despite all that advice, most older Australians don't downsize at all. They age in place. Many say they intend to move, and then never do. 1 in 6 say they simply can't find a smaller home that suits them. The dream is popular, the follow-through is rare, and the people who do go ahead often discover why. Here's what they're chasing. Sell the family home for, say, $900,000. Buy a smaller place for $650,000. On paper, you've just freed up $250,000. That's the number in your head when you call the agent. That's the number that makes the whole thing feel worth it. But that number, that beautiful, round $250,000 number, is a fantasy. Not because it's wrong on paper, because you will never, ever see all of it. Before a single dollar of that gap reaches your bank account, a line of costs is waiting to take its cut. And the very first one in that line is a tax. Most people are stunned to learn they even have to pay. You're buying a cheaper home, and the government is about to charge you tens of thousands of dollars for the privilege. That tax is called stamp duty, and it's the part of downsizing that catches almost everyone off guard. Here's why it stings so badly. Stamp duty is a state tax on the home you buy. Not the one you sell, the one you buy. So even though you're trading down, even though you're moving to something smaller and cheaper, the government still charges you a tax on the purchase. You're downsizing your home and getting an upsized tax bill you never budgeted for. And it is not small. Let's say you buy that smaller place for around $600,000. Here's what stamp duty alone costs you, depending on where you live. In Queensland, about $20,000. In New South Wales, around $21,000. Western Australia and Tasmania, around $22,500. South Australia, nearly $27,000. And in Victoria, the most expensive, over $31,000. For a $700,000 home, Victoria climbs past $37,000. Stop and sit with that. Before you've hired a removalist, before you've paid a lawyer, before you've lifted a single box, you've handed the state $20,000 to $37,000. On most $600,000 to $700,000 downsizes, stamp duty is the single biggest check you'll write in the whole move. And here's the detail that makes retirees furious when they finally understand it. The duty is calculated on the full price of the new home, not on the gap. So if you sell the family home for $1.2 million and buy for $650,000, you don't pay duty on the difference. You pay it on the whole $650,000. The fact that you're trading down counts for nothing. Now, to be fair, a few states have noticed how unfair this feels for older people, and they've acted. Tasmania gives eligible pensioners a 50% discount. Victoria has a pensioner concession. The ACT is phasing stamp duty out altogether. And in 2026, South Australia moved to abolish it for over 60s buying a smaller new home. So if you're in one of those states, check, you might save thousands. But here's the catch. In New South Wales, Queensland, and Western Australia, where a huge share of retirees live, there's no special downsizer break at all. You pay the same duty as any other buyer. This is exactly why economists keep calling stamp duty a tax that traps older Australians. It's so expensive to move that many simply don't. They stay in a home that's too big, too far from care, too hard to manage, because the cost of leaving is a tax bill the size of a new car. The tax that's meant to be neutral quietly keeps people stuck. But as brutal as stamp duty is, it's just the biggest single line on the bill. It's not the whole bill. Underneath it sits a stack of other costs, smaller, quieter, and together, they're where the rest of your $40,000 goes. So, you've paid the stamp duty. The biggest check is written, but the bill is far from over. Here's the stack of costs sitting underneath it, the ones almost nobody adds up before they decide to move. Start with the second biggest. To sell the family home, you hire an agent, and the agent takes a commission, usually somewhere between 2 and 3% of the sale price. On a $900,000 home, that's around $20,000. Gone, off the top, before you see a cent of your sale. Then there's getting the home ready to sell, the pre-sale spruce up, a coat of paint, a tidy garden, maybe new carpet, professional photos, the marketing campaign. For a typical home, that's another $5,000 to $15,000 spent on a house you're about to hand to someone else. Then the lawyers, conveyancing on the sale, conveyancing on the purchase, $2,000 to $4,000. A building and pest inspection on the new place, another $1,000. None of it optional. And then the move itself, the removalists, the cleaning, the skip bin in the driveway. Because 40 years in one home means 40 years of things to sort, keep, or throw away. And here's the cost. Almost everyone forgets the new place needs curtains that fit different windows, furniture that fits smaller rooms, a fridge that fits a narrower nook, the little fit out that quietly runs into thousands. Now, one piece of good news, because I won't only give you the bad. If you've lived in that family home the whole time, you almost certainly won't pay capital gains tax on the sale. The main home is generally exempt, so that one, at least, you're spared. But add up everything else. Agent commission, around $20,000. Styling and marketing, say $8,000. Legal and inspections, $3,000. Moving and fit out, $3,000. And the stamp duty, from a moment ago, $25,000. On a single $900,000 to $650,000 downsize, you've just spent close to $60,000 to move. So let's be honest about the title of this video. The $40,000 mistake? That's not the worst case. That's the optimistic one. Retirement planners who do this for a living say the real range, all in, is more like $50,000 to $80,000. So now you know exactly what leaves. Which means it's finally time for the question that actually matters. Not what you spend, what's left. Because when you take that beautiful $250,000 gap and you subtract all of this from it, the number that remains is the one nobody at the open house will ever say out loud. Here's the number nobody says out loud. You pictured $250,000. Let's find out what you actually get. That $250,000 was never money. It was a gap on a page, the difference between two prices. And before any of it becomes real, the costs we just walked through take their cut. Subtract them. Stamp duty, commission, styling, legal, moving, call it $60,000. Your $250,000 dream is now a $190,000 reality. Just like that, before you've even moved in, $60,000 of the windfall you were counting on is simply gone. And $190,000 is the good version. Financial planners who do this every day say the friction more often eats $60,000 to $100,000. One real example from Western Australia, a retiree sells for $1 million, buys for $750,000, a $250,000 gap, and after the costs, walks away with as little as $100,000 to $150,000. The number in their head was nearly double what landed in their account. But the cruelest version is when the gap was small to start with. Say you love your area and you won't leave it. You sell for $900,000, and the only suitable smaller place nearby costs $820,000. On paper, an $80,000 gap. But the costs of moving are $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. So you uproot your entire life. You write all those checks. You say goodbye to the family home to free up almost nothing. Because in a good suburb, smaller does not mean cheaper. It often just means smaller. And then there's the mistake that turns $40,000 into $160,000. It isn't a bad first move. It's a second one. Picture a couple, 67 years old, downsizing into a beautiful 2-story townhouse. Modern, low maintenance, walk to the cafes. Perfect for who they are at 67. But at 76, the body changes. A hip, a knee, a fall on the stairs that doesn't heal the way it used to. And suddenly those stairs they barely noticed are a wall between them and the rest of their life. So they have to do it all again. Sell, buy, the stamp duty, the commission, the skip bin in the driveway, the curtains that don't fit. Every single cost a second time. 2 moves in retirement can burn $100,000 to $160,000. In Sydney, a single move can top $100,000 on its own. And the mistake was never downsizing. It was downsizing into a home built for who they were, not for who they were about to become. And we still haven't touched the quietest cost of all. Because the cash you do manage to free up doesn't just sit there harmlessly. It can reach into your age pension and pull it down, turning less than I hoped into worse off than before. That's a different set of rules entirely. So why do careful, sensible people keep walking straight into this? It's not because they're foolish. It's because the system is built to make this mistake feel like the smart move. And there's one trap in the rules that almost nobody sees coming until it's too late. The trap in the rules is hiding inside the one thing every pensioner thinks they understand, the family home. Here's how it works. For the age pension, your home is invisible. The assets test simply doesn't count it whether it's worth $300,000 or $3 million. A pensioner can live in a mansion and still draw the full pension because the home they live in is the one asset Centerlink pretends isn't there. But watch what happens the moment you sell. That invisible home becomes visible cash. And cash, Centerlink counts, every dollar of it. So the very windfall you work so hard to free up is the windfall that can start pulling your pension down. There's a grace period money set aside for the new home is shielded for up to 2 years. But any surplus beyond that becomes an assessable asset. And the maths is unforgiving. Past the threshold, every extra $1,000 cuts your pension by $3 a fortnight, until, with a big enough surplus, it's gone entirely. Read that slowly. You took the perfect pension shelter, a home worth nothing to the assets test, and you turned it into the one thing the test punishes hardest, money in the bank. You didn't just spend $60,000 to move. You may have dismantled the very thing that was protecting your income. And here's the part people get wrong most often. They think putting the cash into super dodges this. It doesn't. At pension age, super counts as an asset too. The downsizer contribution is a clever tax tool, but it is not a pension shield. This is the exact point where a property decision quietly becomes a pension decision. And the numbers depend entirely on your situation, which is why this is the one move you model before you make it, not after. We walk through that assets test maths, dollar by dollar, on our Aussie Senior Finance channel. So why do careful, intelligent people keep walking into all of this? Because every voice in the room is pointing the same way. The ads say, free up your equity. The government says, put $300,000 into super. The agent says, now's a great time to sell. Your own tired back says, no more. Gutters, no more garden. Everyone is selling you the upside, and not one of them is doing the subtraction. But I promised you honesty, so here it is. Downsizing is not the mistake. Downsizing blind is the mistake. Done right, it's one of the best moves you can make. When you're trading a genuinely expensive home for a genuinely cheaper one, so real money is left even after the costs. When the running costs actually fall and stay affordable, when you've checked the pension hit and you're at peace with it, and when the new home fits the years ahead, not just the years behind, single level, near the shops, near the care you'll one day need, tick those boxes. And downsizing can be the smartest, freest chapter of your retirement. But the numbers only ever tell half the story, because the heaviest cost of getting this wrong isn't counted in dollars at all, and it's the one almost nobody warns you about. The heaviest cost of getting this wrong was never going to show up on a spreadsheet. It's the home itself. Because a family home isn't an asset, the assets test sees zero, but you see everything. The kitchen where 40 Christmases happen, the doorframe with the pencil marks tracking how tall the kids got, the garden you planted when your back still let you. To Centerlink, it's worth nothing. To you, it's worth a life. And leaving it isn't a transaction, it's grief. The research even has a name for what comes next: relocation stress, transfer trauma, a recognized condition where the upheaval of a late-life move brings anxiety, loneliness, disrupted sleep, a real dip in well-being that can linger for months. And here's the finding that should stop every retiree cold. When researchers at Ahuri studied older Australians who downsized, they found little evidence that it actually made them happier. In fact, satisfaction with their home and their neighborhood usually dropped, at least at first. The thing sold to you as a fresh start very often begins as a loss. And if the new home is the wrong one, the stairs, the distance, the isolation we talked about, that loss doesn't fade. It deepens. Because now you've lost more than the house. You've lost the neighbors who'd notice if your blinds stayed shut, the corner shop that knew your name, the whole quiet web of support that a long lived-in place builds around you without you ever noticing. And then, if you have to move again, you grieve all of it a second time. And almost none of this happens in private. Families pull in different directions over it. When to move, where, how much to keep safe for the kids, versus spend on a better life now. The parent ends up squeezed between the children who want them somewhere safer, the children quietly counting on an inheritance, their own tired body, and their own fear of what's coming. A house that took a lifetime to fill can take a family apart in a single year. This is why the seniors organizations, National Seniors, CODA, the researchers at Ahuri, even the economists at the Grattan Institute keep landing on the same careful conclusion. Downsizing is not a guaranteed win. And sometimes the smartest financial decision and the kindest emotional one are the same decision, the one nobody is selling you. Staying exactly where you are, but if you've made it this far, you're already ahead of the trap, because almost everything painful in this video comes down to a single thing. A decision made on a feeling and a brochure, instead of on the real numbers and the real years ahead. Get those two things right, and downsizing can be everything it promises to be. And getting them right is simpler than you'd think. Getting it right comes down to 4 moves. Make them before you ever call an agent, and the trap simply can't close on you. First, do the subtraction the brochure refuses to do. Before anything else, sit down and add up every cost: the stamp duty, the commission, the styling, the legal, the moving, and subtract the whole lot from your headline gap. Not the dream number, the real one. If I'll free up $250,000 becomes I'll free up $190,000, you need to know that today, while you can still change your mind not on settlement day when you can't. Second, get your pension check before and after the move. And here's the best part, it's free. Centerlink runs a free service called the Financial Information Service, built exactly for this. They will show you what selling does to your age pension, dollar for dollar, before you commit a thing. This single phone call has saved more retirements than any agent ever has. Make it. Third, choose the home for who you're becoming, not who you are. This is the move that saves you. The second move, the $160,000 one. Single level or with a lift. Step free at the door, a bathroom that can take grab rails later, close to the shops, the GP, and your family. Buy for the 80-year-old, you'll be not just the 68-year-old signing the contract. And fourth, slow down and ask the question nobody else will. Before you sell it all, can this home work longer? Sometimes the smartest downsize is no downsize. A few modifications, rails, a ramp, a better bathroom, plus some home care can keep you in the place you love for years more, for a fraction of the cost of moving. The government's Home Equity Access Scheme can free up income without you selling a thing, renting out a room, A granny flat near the kids? Selling the family home is one option. It was never the only one. Downsizing can be one of the best decisions of your life. The lighter load, the freed up cash, the right home for the right years. But only when it's a decision made on real numbers and clear eyes, not a reflex made on a feeling and a sales pitch. The $40,000 mistake isn't downsizing. It's downsizing without doing the maths first. And there's one more piece of that, maths the biggest, and the one no sales office will ever run for you. Because the cash you free up doesn't just sit in your account, it lands on the assets test. It gets counted, deemed, measured against thresholds, and it can quietly cut your age pension by more than every transaction cost in this video combined. Getting the property right and the pension wrong is the real $40,000 mistake. We run those exact numbers, the thresholds, the deeming, the before and after on our channel Aussie Senior Finance. The link's right here. Do that math before you move, not after.